Hello everyone. We are going to learn further more about Jupyter Notebook and its different components that there are. So before we get into understanding a little further about Jupyter, let's also look at revisiting IPython that we have discussed in our previous session. So what exactly was IPython? IPython was a powerful interactive shell that we have explored along with Python shell. Python shell creates a REPL environment for you and you are able to write Python code and execute the code that you have written. You have also looked at opening up the IPython shell, writing the code in IPython shell and executing the code that you have written there. We have also seen a broad list of additional features that IPython shell offers on top of what Python shell offered us, right? IPython not only acts as an interactive shell to us, it also acts as a kernel backend for your Jupyter. So Jupyter Notebook is a web application wherein it has got an interactive UI which projects to the user. It also has got a backend to it, isn't it? So your IPython acts as a kernel backend to your Jupyter application. So what exactly is a kernel? Kernels are nothing but the processes that run independently and basically they try to interact with the front-end application. So it interprets the code that you write, it evaluates what you have written, and then it further interacts back with the UI interface that it has. That's all what kernel is. Kernels are again specific to the programming languages. Like you have IPython kernel for Python programming language. You have IR kernel for your R programming language and a different kernel for Julia programming language. You know that Jupyter offers us a broad list of programming languages that you can work upon. But for now, we are focusing much upon Python. So we are looking at only IPython kernel here. You can visit this particular documentation or this particular web page that I have listed here. I'm providing the link in the section below of this particular video. We can actually go to any particular section that we would wish to in order to understand more about Jupyter. For instance, if I would want to understand what are the different user interfaces that Jupyter offers us, I can look at Jupyter Notebook, Jupyter Console, Jupyter Qt Console and all, right? If I want to learn more about what are kernels that Jupyter supports, you can obviously find the different kernels that it supports. It broadly describes about IPython because fundamentally people use it for Python programming language. All right. So as I mentioned to you earlier, kernels are nothing but programming language specific processes that run independently and basically interact with the user interface that Jupyter provides us. So without any further ado, let's jump into opening up a Jupyter notebook here. We can start a Jupyter notebook by just keying in Jupyter space notebook in the terminal here. So which would start a local host server. It basically opens up your Jupyter front-end application on a specific local server. Given a specific port number here, the port number that we are looking at here is 8888. I can also look at these details in the terminal where we have typed in Jupyter Space Notebook, right? So we can copy paste this particular address that you are looking at here into any of the given browsers that you have. Obviously, you are going to land up to this particular page that you are looking at. Let's understand a little further about Jupyter Notebook. What are its advantages and what are the different features that it offers us? This is the test project folder that we have been working for a while. Since I have started off Jupyter Notebook right from that directory, it actually opened up the application right at that particular directory where we have started off the Jupyter Notebook server. So it has got three different tabs, one of which is files, which lists down all the files that are present in the current working directory. I'm calling it as current working directory. What exactly is our current working directory now? It is test_project, right? Because that's where we are, right? If you go back to terminal, that's where we are, isn't it? There are three different files or subdirectories here. Environment.yaml file, requirements.txt file are the two different files that we have created earlier. Test_env is your virtual environment folder or subdirectory that we have created earlier. Running tab would provide a list of processes that are running, which you can shut down, of course, if there are any processes that are up and running. Clusters is all about if there are any open clusters at the moment. So clusters are purely specific to parallel processing, which we are not currently dealing with. All right. Let me go back to files here. I can very well go about opening up a new Python notebook here. And once I open my Python notebook, I observe that I can write my code in this particular cell here. which is highlighted in green here. If I press escape, click on this and press escape, I do not find this particular cell as editable, but rather instead of green color, I am now observing it as blue color, right? Of course, I can go about adding new cells here by clicking on this plus icon, all right? Or pressing B key here actually introduces a new cell below. Pressing A key here introduces a new cell above. All right, these are shortcuts. There are a lot of shortcuts for Jupyter Notebook. You can easily find them online. But however, if you want to write the code, you want to make this particular cell editable here. Okay. So once your cell is editable, you can write any code that you wish to. However, when I look at this particular drop down, I have 4 different choices that I need to make. It should either be code, that is this cell should either be code or markdown or something called NB convert or something called heading. Let us first discuss about what markdown is. So markdown actually is a feature, or probably it's a markup language which will help us create a documentation on this particular notebook, right? For instance, if you are having a data visualization in a cell below, then you want to explain the findings that you observe in that particular data visualization. Markdown is a great way to document all your findings. Or if you want to describe about this particular notebook or describe the logic of a particular program, then your markdown will greatly help you. For instance, I can type in hash here, and then I can write intro to Jupyter and click on shift plus enter, which actually helped me to create a heading, isn't it? If I provide double hash instead of single hash, then I would create a subheading. You can still create a smaller heading here by providing one more hash here. I believe now you got the gist of what I'm talking about. Not only headings, you can keep on creating bullet points here like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 and so on, right? So now the bullet points are created. In fact, you can go about creating a bold text content by providing or enclosing the text in double asterisk here. So now this text, whatever you had, is now in bold. The font weight is increased, isn't it? That's what I'm trying to say here. You can also key in italic words by enclosing it within single asterisk rather than double asterisk. You can do various formatting using these particular markdown that you have. You can easily go about finding markdown styling shortcuts, and you can visit any of these web pages and understand more about the syntaxes pertinent to creating a markdown cell or whatever, right? So this is an example that we have already discussed. We can also look at doing text styling by creating bold text content, wherein you enclose your text in double asterisk. When you enclose your text in single asterisk, you are going to create italic formatting. You can also do strike through, you can do highlight for whatever, right? So you can go about checking such web pages that I am looking at currently in order to understand more about the markdown syntax. So once you are familiar with markdown, so I would also want to rename this particular file, right? I just click on untitled here. For now it's untitled, right? So I will change this to intro_to_Jupyter. Now the file name is updated. Of course, you can go about renaming the file name by clicking on file here and then look at clicking on rename. You can save this as another file or make a copy of this into another file. You can actually start off a new notebook from here itself. You can download this whole notebook that you have written into any of these required file formats. You can download it as .pdf or .html or .markdown or .py or any of these mentioned formats, right? You do not have any numbering system for any of the markdown cells like you have for your code cells, right? This is where you can write code. Of course, I can go about writing code here. I can just print hello world. All right. Just click on shift plus enter. I'm clicking on shift plus enter. It not only executes the code that I have written in this cell, it also creates a new cell to me. Control plus enter or command plus enter will just execute this cell and it does not create a new cell to us. That's the basic difference between these two shortcuts that we can use. Instead of using shortcuts, you can also go about clicking on this particular icon that's given here. That also does the same thing. You can copy this code, you can paste this code again, you can paste any number of times. You can cut the cells. I'm cutting all the cells. I can join all these cells by highlighting all of them and press Shift plus M. So I'm merging all the cells together into one single cell here. All right. And that's how it works. There are various other features here, like you can insert a cell above and insert a cell below. As I mentioned to you, these are the two shortcuts. When it's highlighted in blue, you need to press the key A in order to insert a cell above and press the key B in order to insert a cell below. All right. You can also look at interrupting a kernel or restarting a kernel or reconnecting to a kernel or shutting down a kernel. So whenever you have written a logic which eventually went into an infinite loop or something, right? You do not want to unnecessarily waste the resources or consume the CPU and other resources in your machine. So obviously we go about interrupting the kernel, so the process ends then and there. All right, perfect. So we have pretty much learned most of the basic stuff in Jupyter Notebook. You can also log out from Jupyter Notebook by clicking on this particular logout button here. That's pretty much what I wanted to discuss about the Jupyter Notebook. As we progress through further lectures in the introduction to Python and Python basics and advanced Python, you will be much more familiar with Jupyter Notebook as a whole. All right, that's all in this particular session, and thanks for watching.